Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Today is day 43 since 5-year-old Summer Wells disappeared, and in this episode we're going to look at what is inside Don's shack, right? It's the one place that was apparently off limits to Chris McDonough from the interview room, and that was the shack. Candace said even the boys weren't allowed inside. And obviously it's hard to ignore something like that. Now I went into this last section of Chris McDonough's coverage thinking about game changers, thinking about what are the game changers in this case. And I'm still thinking about them. So that is something we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail in this episode. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment. I'm also doing a live stream later today at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So I'll be telling you a little bit more about that at the end of this episode. And let's get started. So, the shack. What is inside Don's shack? Now, clearly we would want to look at things like shovels possibly, and dirt, possibly stains, and perhaps other substances inside the shack. But I'm not sure I'd call the shack a game changer. Maybe you'd find something in there and maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you'd find Don in there. We don't actually know where Don was at the time that Chris McDonough from the interview room was on site. Where was he? Was he at work? Was his vehicle there? Not very clear. I do think, personally, I think the last photo is the game changer, along with whatever happened at the swimming hole. I'm inclined to think that everything, all the talk about planting flowers and going in the house and going in the basement, I'm personally inclined to think all of that is smoke and mirrors, and that nothing actually happened at Ben Hill Road. But instead, where we need to be looking is the swimming hole and the route that would be taken from there. And that certainly makes things a lot more difficult. I also have the uneasy feeling Summer never made it back to Ben Hill Road on the 15th, based on some of the latest statements that have been made. I covered some of them in my latest statements analysis on the Major Insights video. And I think there may even be an analogy to the Chris Watts case. Remember, Chris Watts comes back to his home, right, from the well site, and then it's all about the house. Everyone's looking at the house, and the last place people tend to think about is the well site, and it just doesn't seem possible or probable. And one wonders whether something like that hasn't happened here, because the vehicle is quite a good piece of equipment for disposal, in a sense, for getting distance and, making Summer disappear, I guess. So what do you guys think about that? I think it's possible something was possibly taken in the vehicle. So in terms of the shack, I think it's possible something could have been taken in the vehicle and later hidden or returned to the shack, similar to the implements used in the Chris Watts case as well. And what I'm talking about there is that this could have happened later, getting something from that shack later on, and meeting up wherever Summer was left behind, something like that. I think the difficult question now to interrogate is, where has Don worked over the past several years? Which sites? Because what tends to happen in true crime cases is people tend to dispose of things where they are familiar, where they've got a sense of psychological control or access control, or some kind of familiarity, where they've got an edge over law enforcement and people who don't know the area as well as they do. Of course, you have no better knowledge of an area than of your own home. That is definitely true as well. I think one's also got to ask, where was Don when Chris McDonough arrived on the property? And where's Grandma? So in the live stream, I'm going to sort of try and bring it all together, all of this information. It feels like there's a lot of chaos, a lot of clutter, a lot of contradictory statements. And what I want to do is direct you to the signal within the noise. You want to see clearly through all of the sort of foliage, all of the murk. You want to see something clear. You want to see. You don't want to not see the woods for the trees. We want to see the woods, right? And this is typical of true crime, is trying to see through the smoke and mirrors, trying to see the evidence between sort of all the noise and the distraction and the nonsense, right? That's what we're going to try and do. And I'm going to deal with that in the live. I'm also going to talk a little bit about this final episode by Chris McDonough. He seemed quite emotional towards the end of it. I didn't find it very emotional at all. I found what was inside the home a little bit, I guess I expected it because I've looked at a lot of photos of the inside of the home already. I'm not saying I wasn't surprised or, the state of the clutter and the mess. I'm not saying that didn't surprise me, but I don't know if I was emotional about it. Of course, I wasn't there. I couldn't. Someone mentioned, you one thing you don't see or one thing you don't sense is the smell when you're there. I found it quite dull and dreary. I don't mean that as a slight against the interview room. I mean, I don't know whether the sun went behind the clouds. I know Chris McDonough also used a different camera, but I mean, I found the setting, going up the hill. I found it was quite a dreary place. The house. Certainly that part of the house, often the media have taken photos from below the hill. When you're on top of the hill, especially in the area between the door and the trailer or the camper, it's not a particularly nice place. It looks like there's a lot of sharp objects, certainly not for a 5-year-old. There's a lot of sharp objects lying around, and it brings to mind what Don said about, that the boys must look after Summer, and then Summer's outside again. Well, get Summer now, kind of thing. But you can imagine that in this sort of minefield of sharp metal objects and all sorts of things that are lying around. I also found that it felt very grim. It felt very grim to me. I thought it had an atmosphere of death and decay, rags and ruin, diesel and dust. But anyway, I'll go into that in more detail in the live stream. I'm also going to be talking about your best comments, some of the best comments from you guys that I came across. We're going to talk about that. So I'll see you guys during the live stream, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.